At this point in time, I'm going to ask our Executive Director and Chief Lobbyist, Bob Stewart, to come up and talk to you about items E and F under agenda item number 2.
Thank you, Gino, and good afternoon, brothers and sisters. My name is Bob Stewart, Executive Director. I want to talk to you a little bit about another threat that's happening locally as a result of a state bill that I want to go into a little bit more detail. I think there's probably not one person in this room that doesn't remember last year and our fight over furloughs, where the county executive initially proposed 10-day furloughs for just McGeo employees, but it was expanded into police and fire. But everybody remembers that only county side employees sustained any furloughs. MCPS employees in that system did not absorb one furlough day. You remember that? Yep. Well, there's a state law, but it's called MOE. MOE. Raise your hand if you know what that means. Okay? Not too many hands. Let me explain it to you. About 20 years ago, the state of Maryland passed a law called a maintenance of effort law. They did it for several reasons, but one is to make sure that money that was going from the state to local jurisdictions around the state for education, that those local jurisdictions use that money for education instead of receiving it and spending it on other things other than education. That's one reason. The other reason was the law provided for a escalating formula that if a jurisdiction's school enrollment increased, it provided for an increase in funding that a jurisdiction had to maintain from one year to another. For example, if a jurisdiction this year was spending $100 million on their county's educational system, next year they could not spend $95 million. They couldn't go backwards. It had to go forwards. And what has happened in Montgomery County, which is known for a jurisdiction with quality public school education, and believe me, there's not anybody up here or anybody in this room or in the county that doesn't believe in a good quality public school system. But over the last 10 years, Montgomery County's political structure, the appropriating body, the county council, has appropriated over that 10 years a total of $611 million over and above what MOE would have required over the last 10 years. The other thing you need to know is that for the last 6-7 years, the percent of available revenue, tax revenue that comes into the county, over the last 6 or 7 years, the percent of available revenue that's going to MCPS has hovered around 54 to 55%, depending on the year. This year, this FY11, the year that we're in now, that percentage, according to the county council, is up to 57%. Now, in your packet, there's a pie chart, green sheet, that I'd like you to pull out, because I want to draw your attention to it. On the back, and you can see the pie chart distribution of available revenue on the front here. On the back, turn on the back side. In a letter from County Executive Leggett to Nancy Florine, former council president, on December 2nd, just a few weeks ago, in his own letter to the council president, he draws in his letter attention to, on the back side, the slant chart. Look at the third column. Agency as percent of total budget. Montgomery County government, 35.5. MCPS, 58.6. If it's 58.5 or more, you round it up to 59. But the point is that even in Ike's letter to Council President Florine, he uses the 59% figure. Yet, for those of you who have responded to our request to come out to the budget forums that Ike has had, raise your hand if you've come out. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. His overhead projection and his charts that he starts out with and then refers to several times during his presentation only shows MCPS's percent of revenue as 52.6%. Now there's a big difference between 52.6 and 57 or 59, depending on if Ike will believe his own letter. Okay? Now, the problem, if that weren't bad enough, the most recent request by the Superintendent, Jerry Wiest of MCPS, when he sent his budget over, was an increase of $83 million. $83 million. Now that meets maintenance of effort, and if that $83 million was fully funded, that means that this coming year, the percent of the available revenue that's going to MCPS would increase to 62%. Now, you can see whether it's 57, 59, or 62, as their percent goes up, what happens to our percent on the county side of the budget? Goes down, that's right. So, that's why you saw it about 3 or 4 weeks ago now, Council President Valerie Irvin publicly coming out in support of amending the state's MOE law. She's no stranger to education. She was on the school board prior to becoming a council member. She believes in public education too. But she knows that unless the state's MOE law is amended, the county side of budgets, not only here but around the state, will continue to be squeezed at the expense of an expanding school board budget that is driven by a state law. Without a change, it will be critical, you know, and have a critical impact, negative impact on our budget. So we are working with her. A bill was just developed last week, and in conjunction with the state legislators in Montgomery and elsewhere, we are looking to amend maintenance of effort. Now, there was an effort last year that came close but did not succeed. So we are working together legislatively and through a community outreach to community organizations around this county, approaching them and seeking their support, political support, in favor of amending the maintenance of effort law. So that's what we're doing, you know, to address that issue. In conjunction with that, last Thursday evening, a letter was emailed to the governor, Senate President Mike Miller, and Speaker of the House Mike Bush, a letter that's also in your packet. It is the letter with the 3 logos of the firefighters, the police union, and our union. And then yesterday morning, about 8 a.m., that same letter was emailed to every delegate and every state senator in the entire state of Maryland, as well as a press release sent out in every media market in the state of Maryland. So we're trying to get that word out, build political support for amending MOE, which will be critical. The other thing that is a dark cloud that we have to pay attention to is the threat of in Annapolis that they would shift the burden of funding state, school teacher pensions from the state, which pays 100% of it now, to local jurisdictions. And some of you maybe read some of that coverage in the paper. Fortunately, the governor did not propose that in his recent budget announcement last week. But last year, Senate President Miller supported it and pushed it. It wasn't successful, but some formulas that are being floated in Annapolis would involve shifting 40% of that cost to local jurisdictions. If that happened, that $300 to $350 million budget gap here in the county would expand to by about $100 million. And a further threat to maintaining our core benefits, wages, and retirement here in the county. So, is there anything else? Thank you very much.
You know, I got to say, this is a very handsome group. Give yourselves a hand. It can't all be bad. We've got to find a laugh here and there. Before I go any further, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize my staff. Executive board members are in the room, shop stewards, and folks that are on the bargaining team and committee. Can you guys all stand up a minute and be seen? All of you, please. Sisters and brothers, let me say this to you. Most of what the union does is done out of your sight. It's done at the bargaining table, it's done in the political arena, it's done in community meetings, it's done at rallies, it's done knocking on doors trying to get the right people elected and the wrong ones unelected. And if not for the staff, the executive board, the stewards, and the bargaining committee, we wouldn't stand a chance. They're our frontline army, and whether you want to accept it, believe it or not, they work for you and your families 24/7, and they deserve a round of applause. Now, what Bob went over on the maintenance of effort is critical because, you know, if one part of a pie keeps growing and the other keeps sharing or shrinking, then obviously the people eating off that small pie, smaller piece, are going to get real skinny real fast. And that may not be a bad thing for some of us, including me, but not when it comes to your pocketbook. You don't want your pocketbook to shrink. And that's something that we take very seriously here at the union. I want to be clear, however, about the school board. Our complaint is not with those hardworking men and women that educate and take care of our children when they're in the school system. Many of those hardworking men and women are our members in the school health rooms and our members who cross the kids in the streets to and from school, the crossing guards. So we share, our own people share in what makes Montgomery County a great school system. Our beef, quite frankly, is with the leadership of the unions. And, you know, we've had many conversations behind closed doors to get them to understand that we would all survive probably a little easier with a lot fewer punches and dings and bruises if we all approach this in total solidarity.